Okay, thank you. Welcome, everyone. Ginger and I are here on a Friday afternoon to talk about board recruiting and why us. And when I mean why us, I mean museum, community, any board you might be on. So say hey, Ginger.
Hey, Ashley, how are you?
Fine.
Hello, everybody. It's good to be on with you. And as you can see, this is one of our favorite slides. A true philanthropist gives from the heart, and a donor gives from the head. We all like people who are giving from their heart. Or am I one ahead of you here?
Okay. Yep, you're good.
All right. Go ahead, Ashley.
Oh, okay. Well, we've all been on boards and we've all been part of nonprofit organizations. And, you know, this is so true. What makes a good nonprofit and what makes a great nonprofit? And also, board members can make or break an organization. So the key is, how do you recruit superstars, great nonprofit, great boards to be on nonprofits? And what that boils down to is, what kind of culture do you have in your philanthropy? What is your board doing to instill that type of responsibility, that type of how to be a great one? And is everybody, your staff, your board members, aware of how important raising funds, volunteering, the awareness of what your organization does? Also, a really important thing too is focusing on the future of what your board goals are, not harping on the past, moving on. So what we're going to talk about today is how to figure out where you need these board members, what they have to offer, and the process of recruiting board members. So we want to have a great board and for a great organization. I'm going to move on to the next slide and talk about that.
That's the one I was talking about.
Yeah, that's okay. That's okay. And Ginger actually will add to this because she brought up some things. A philanthropist is not necessarily a $1 billion heir. It's somebody who truly loves giving to causes they believe in. They give from the heart. They might not have much to offer financially, but every little bit's important to them, and they spread the word to their community about their cause. And a donor gives from the head. I tend to be a donor sometimes. Okay, I must give. I must do this. But but certain causes I truly believe I give from the heart. And so on your board, you want all philanthropists.
If at all possible, it's always best. One of the things to do in a board meeting when you are having them, and one of the things that you'll hear fundraisers speak about is what we call COP, C-O-P, and that is the culture of philanthropy. And every time we have a board meeting, we like to have that revisited. That can be in the form of doing something that represents your mission. It could be having somebody who, if you were an organization who has supported people in the community, to have one of your clients come and visit. It could be, in our case, because a lot of us are museum properties, it could be showing new acquisitions. It could be talking about something being conserved, something that revisits your mission so that the board knows where their money's going. Ashley?
That's right. You're an ambassador, and you're able to identify prospective donors and fundraising volunteers. And you participate in some fundraising task every year. But real quick to add that, especially for the museum properties, it really helps. Part of this whole culture of philanthropy is that your staff members are involved, that they understand and can promote it, and they can serve as an ambassador. So, it's the whole team effort. It's the board, it's the volunteers, and it's the staff. All right, before we start recruiting board members, you have to figure out what areas, what gaps you have in your board. You just don't recruit to recruit. You want to fill in some weaknesses that maybe a board member who used to do this certain role or had an expertise had to leave. So before you can start figuring out your board gaps, everybody has to participate in this assessment. It has to be 100% buy-in from the board. So you set up an assessment. It could be short at a board meeting, maybe 10, 20 questions. All board members are there and fill it out together. I find it's best, and Ginger probably agrees, have them do this assessment at a board meeting at the same table instead of saying take this home and return this later.
You'll never get it back.
Exactly. And what's nice about this is also you can talk about it. You know, you can go over the assessment together, fill in each individual, but also talk about it. And in this assessment, you want to make, you know, you put in there, how much level of engagement does your board have? How much fundraising and expertise are already existing on the board? So that will help you identify the gaps when you're figuring out who you want to recruit, in which Ginger is going to talk about in a second about how to find those prospective donors. So the key is get your board gap done. You've got that ready to go. You know your weaknesses, and that will help you begin your process.
We've already, go ahead, Ashley.
Sorry, go ahead.
We've already covered what are your board gaps with Ashley. The other questions on here is what we're going to discuss going forward, finding the right prospects, the nominating committee process, and we'll talk a little bit about the nominating committee itself, the why us for our mission, and the please join us. The ask of the board member, like in all fundraising things that we do, the ask is a very important piece of it, and who does the ask, etc., is also a very important piece of it. The board engagement covenant, this includes the conflict of interest, which we're required to have our board members sign, but it's other things that the board may include. And then finally, the welcome to the board of directors and the orientation. Finding the right prospects is the first piece. One place that I will tell you that I will suggest that you look when you're going through this process, look in your own donor base. First, these are people who already are expressing some loyalty to your organization and others. But if you don't see anybody in your donor base, we always get all the referrals from different board members saying, I know this person, she's a perfect person. Well, you don't know that. You've got to find out more about the person. You have to find out what is their circle of influence. Where do they fit into the community? Do they fit in something that will be of help to you? If you're a museum property and the person has served on boards to feed the homeless, their interest in you may not be right. They may be a good board member, but they may not in fact be interested in what you do. So you need to know that. You need to know where they fit into the community and where they can help your organization specifically. We do check references of prospective board members. And one of the pitfalls that I always look for, to be quite honest, it's fabulous to get when you have new board members, but people who are on 10 boards, you're not going to be one of their top 3 organizations. So to sort of steer away from people who are giving nodding things to many boards, because they're not in fact probably going to become your best board member. They're not going to be your superstar. I try to avoid those types of people. They're very, they can't say no is what it is. I found myself in that position once in my own lifetime where I was on more boards than I should have been. And you really do have to make a choice. You have to pick the organizations that are best for you.
Hey, Ginger, also I want to add something quick to that. When you're looking for these superstars, see if they're a superstar on 1 or 2 other boards, and of course that in your cause, and that's asking around, asking other, people who've been on other boards and worked with this potential prospect, because you want a board full of superstars, right?
Yes, of course.
Go for the goal. If you're going to go for it all.
I'll go back for 1 second to the finding that second right there, to create a portfolio of suspects and prospective research. That is what fundraisers do all the time. We spend our lives doing this, and it's fun to be able to teach board members how to look at people and create a portfolio of people who have what you're looking for, and they become your suspects. Then through your research, you find out if they're going to become your prospects. The prospects are the people who will actually be interested in what you're doing. The suspects may have the qualifications, but they may not, in fact, turn out to be the person that you need for that seat, because you do want to get the right person in the right seat. I'm sorry, go ahead, Ashley.
And you know what? That's where your board gap assessment comes in.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're looking at those portfolios of suspects, and you can do prospects too, but you are, again, looking for that week that you're trying to find somebody to fill to make it a little stronger. All right, there you go.
Develop a candidate profile. Know what you are looking for. In other words, this is a job description. You want to know what is the person that you are looking for to fill this job. And that is one thing that's very important to have. You should have a job description for every board member, but develop one specifically for that seat on the board. Take the candidate profile to the board, have the board agree on it and look at it, because they're the people who are going to be helping you. Identify the candidates, that's back to that prospect research, and then prioritize the candidates from the one that you want the most to the one that you want the least. Of course, you want them all, but you probably have some preferences for some of them. The nominating committee is a really important committee. People think of it, and I said I would bring it up again, because the nominating committee is more than just a committee that helps select new board members. Usually they also make sure they are sort of the committee that tests how effective the board is being, because of what they are doing should lead to the board becoming a more effective board. So they should be always looking into the effectiveness of the board, as well as doing the nominating of future board members.
How many people usually should be on a nominating committee, Ginger?
It depends on the size of the board. I like boards that are between 10 and 12 people, and I would probably put 3 to 4 on the nominating committee at a maximum.
Is there a training that can be done for people on a nominating committee?
Is there training that could be? There should be a training that could be done for them. There should be ways. The nominating, each committee on your board should have a description of the committee and the committee's responsibilities. And a lot of times the nominating committee does kind of get left out, because people don't think of them as an ongoing committee. They think of them, they become active when we need a board member. But the nominating committee should be active all the time. They should be checking on the board itself and if it's doing its job well.
And also the nominating committee, you're not just necessarily looking at board members for the next year.
Mm-mm.
Could be looking at board members 2 or 3 years out, and then if because they might not be able to, the prospect has already told you that they can't do next year, but they would be interested in the following year. So as Ginger said, that's a continuous effort, and you can plan out years out, especially because you'll know when terms are ending. If they're 2 or 3 year terms, you'll know when to have people. You want to have a list ready to go.
Right.
And if somebody needed to leave the committee for, or the board for some reason, you have somebody you've already thought of.
And when if you have term limits too, you can only serve 6 years maximum, you're going to know who's going to be rolling off of your board. The nominating committee also, if you want to keep a board member who's rolling off engaged, the nominating committee also helps with that. You can have non-board members on your committees in the board, inside of the board. The development committee is one where we always like to get non-board members. But so you should also be planning for what are you going to do with that board member who's rolling off. Do you want to just let them roll off and go away? Or do you want them to roll off and stick around and come back again? Because when you have somebody who's really good, you sometimes want to do that.
Exactly. I call them advisory committees. You just bring them in when you need them, and then their obligations aren't, what a board member obligation is. And they do have that experience from being on that board and knowing about the organization. So it's really nice to have advisory committee members.
The interviewing, the inviting, and the orientating also fall under the nominating committee. And it's over to you, Ashley.
Okay. So the main theme of this is why us. So I look at this at 2 ways. Okay. So why us, as in why would somebody want to be on our board, and then as a board, a potential prospect, why would you want to be on that board? So it's a 2-way street, right? So to me, let's start with why you think somebody should be on your board. And it's because you believe in your organization's mission, and so you would want them to believe in your mission's organization. One thing they will learn, and you have learned, is you will learn how to ask for money. And that might not just be one-on-one, because we know that sometimes that makes people uncomfortable, but it might be through social media or close friends. But, raising money is a big part of being a board member. It has to be done. And that's the partnership board does, one of the many partnerships with the staff, the executive director, and as we know, the director of development cannot do it by themselves. And you will learn how to run an effective meeting. I love this. I had to throw this in because it really has helped me as a board member to have that responsibility of volunteering to run a meeting and facilitate it. I want to, many of you know I love my charts, which I didn't put in here, but I found a really cool pie chart that breaks down the top benefits of board service and what people are looking for when they want to be on a board. 50% say it's personal fulfillment. They truly believe cause, it's a good fit, they're aware, they want to educate. 30% believe that it helps them acquire new skills. We have a young man on the foundation board that I'm running right now who's 25, he works at Mars, and he's not quite ready to be a board member, but he's on advisory committee and he has volunteered to be our secretary because he wants to acquire new skills of learning how to be on a board, how a board's run. So this was a good way. The next is people want to learn, it's 15% of how to improve their leadership skills. And then network and meet new people. I have met so many new wonderful people. I'm sure Ginger has, and I'm sure all of you have, by serving on a board. You've made new friends. By being on this development committee, I've met Ginger and Jane, and so it's a great way to meet new people, and that's something important to people when they serve on a board. So this is what I'm saying to you, and I'm going to talk about real quick what individuals who are being asked to be on the board, which many of you I'm sure are, what they should look for. Before they say yes to your board, what should they do? And one of the things I say before joining a board is, and we're going to talk about this in the engagement, but, how much do I give, and what will be expected of me? It's kind of like you're interviewing for a job, so these are questions you want to ask before you go farther into the interview. What will be expected to me? We all have time commitments, what's your current board's personnel network? Each board member names of a trustee, what community, what are individuals on your board, and how can you help by filling in to that empty chair? And so it's many things that consider, that you have to consider before you say yes to being on a board also.
I have one thing to add to that as well. When we're talking about the best person to make the ask as well, that's something that's really critically important. And one of the sad things that I've had happen, I actually said this in an earlier call that I had today, is that a lot of times when board members go to ask a potential board member to join the board, they neglect to tell the potential board member that there's a financial obligation involved with joining the board. And that's a disservice to the organization, and it's a disservice to the new board member. You need to be very clear and upfront about the financial obligation, which is also one of the reasons why I do suggest that you should in fact have an application process, and on the application in writing put that so that they see it when they fill out their application to join your board, so that they're very clear about it. Because I've had people, it happened when I was with the YMCA with a person who was invited to join. It was a very sad situation, and It's very depressing, to say the least. So do either have an application or be sure to be upfront and honest with potential board members. And as a potential board member yourself, ask the question.
Yes, and I like that because, as we were saying, there's two sides. And we'll talk about that too, more in the board engagement, because it gives an opportunity for the perspective. It's kind of like applying for college. You know, you do those 101 interviews, you sit down, you fill out the application, and then you know what's expected of you. So we'll talk about that more in the board engagement covenant, which I'll explain why it's called that also. Good. Okay, let me move to the next slide, and Ginger will cover that.
Who invites a prospective member to join a board? That is a very important part. I know that some of you have worked with me who are on this webinar, have worked with me in terms of fundraising, and you know that we spend a lot of time talking about who's going to make the ask and who is the best person to make the ask. If there is a person who's on your board who's close to your potential board member, that's probably the person who should make the ask. But be very careful about that, because the board itself needs to have designated members as authorized to make the ask. They should either discuss it as a whole and decide who's going to ask this potential board member, because you don't want to have a board member just going out and asking people to join the board. It can only be certain people who should be doing that. It shouldn't be, you should be deciding that based on each potential board member, new board member. So that is a really critically important piece. You want somebody who can speak well about the organization. You want somebody who understands the organization, truly knows what it's doing, and you want somebody who loves your organization to be making the ask.
And when they make this ask, so what the nominating committee comes up with their list of prospects for that year. Mm-hmm. And then the board sits down and they go over the list of, you know, the nominating committee comes to the board and they say, this is who, you know, is on our list as prospects. And you sit down as a board and you go over who that list of who should be the assigned person, or people, could be two. I think it's nice that the board president's kind of involved, but also the person that knows them, or who, like you suggested.
Yeah, I think both should be involved.
Yeah, I agree.
With you, Ashley. They should both be involved. The one thing not to do is, if you're asking one person, don't go with 5 people to make the ask. That's too many people. If you're going to ask a person, no more than 2 people. If you might be doing something else, you may go up to 3 people, but we never do an ask in fundraising or for this part of more than 3 people.
And a lot of times this person already kind of knows they're going to be asked, because they filled out the application, you know, they've kind of had their interview and they don't know when they're going to be asked, but they kind of like being a dame, you know. You've been approved, but so the same way, it's just they kind of already expect it, and they actually, because they filled out the application, they know what the expectations are. Okay. All right. So this name, the Board Engagement Covenant, Ginger and I were on a webinar a couple of months ago, and you know, like most people call them board agreements or board contracts. Sounds like a business thing, which it is, but it isn't. A covenant is, I love the name he suggested, so Ginger and I were like, oh, we like this name. So the Board Engagement Covenant is, okay, once you've done the application, it's kind of the same, it's part of the application. It's when they're filling out the application, this is like a pre-engagement. They're seeing what is expected of them, what they need to raise and give, you know, by December 31st, 2017. And I remind people too, and you can say this in your application / list of, you know, you can break up your gifts. I don't know why sometimes people think I got to give it all at one time. So you can break it up to 12, 5, and let them know the options of ways that they'll be able to give. And sometimes you might have a minimum of just giving, but also, or you might have the minimum that, give and then they have to raise. Also have in there what their commitment is. Is it 75% of board and committee meetings? I know the board that I work with right now, I've never met any of them because we're all over the country and we do it on the phone, but they're obligated to go off each quarter and work with their committees on their own. And give them a list of working committees to choose from. And for each committee and for the board, have job descriptions and roles. What is what is the job description of a board member? What are the expectations? And what are the roles of each committee? Like, what's the role of the nominating committee? They have it all up front. It's a cute saying I heard on that same webinar. You want to give them a ramp to get on, but also you want to give them an opportunity to get off the exit ramp. So after reading all this and filling out the application, you're giving them a chance to say, I can't do it right now, or I'd love to do it. When can I start? I'd rather have a maybe than a no. And so this gives them an opportunity to see, because you don't want somebody who doesn't know what they're getting into, then they realize it once they're already on. You want to put everything up front for them, and I think they truly appreciate it also. Let's get to the next slide. Okay. And it's not going.
It's not moving. Slide's not changing. I just called Carrie, our lifesaver.
I got it. It's just really slow. I have to learn patience. Okay. So these are more suggestions that would go into that list of expectations before they sign it. You want to give them plenty of time to read it. I like to give a deadline, though, when they're given this board engagement covenant to read over. Don't say, oh, just get it back when you can. Give them a deadline. Give them a week or two, because it's either yes or no or maybe. So in there, talk about one of their responsibilities is to educate their family and friends on the organization's mission. So you want to make sure that they have an understanding of what that clear mission is. And again, provide those role responsibilities and descriptions and explain, okay, this is major. This is what I've seen in so many boards. Term limits are not there. And I've heard people grumble all over the world. That person's been on there for 20 years and we can't figure out how to get them off. Right, Ginger?
Oh, absolutely right. I've seen that on a lot of boards too. Yeah, you must have term limits.
Yes, and I like what Ginger said. You can write the term limits how you want. You can do 2 years, 3 years. You can do up to 6 years, but renew every 2 years or every 3 years, because again, you're giving them that exit ramp, but also it gives you an opportunity. If the board member is not working out, the term limit gives you an opportunity that they go off the board, roll off. Or what I like to do is give them 2 years, and then you sit down with that board member and you say, as board president, not executive director, board president, you say, how do you feel about renewing another 2 years? Is it something you want to continue doing? And it gives you the opportunity to see if that board member is the right fit for your organization. So really, term limits are very important. Okay, Ginger. Now what do we do that they've read over the application and the board engagement?
Well, one of the things that obviously they have to sign the covenant. The board chair sends a welcome letter, and in the welcome letter, it should be a welcome, and it should give them the responsibilities. Again, not a huge, big, in-depth thing, because they've got the rest, they know it now. But just something saying, just as a reminder, we will be looking forward to seeing you at our meetings on such and such a date, etc., so that they're reminded that, yeah, this is a real deal. It's a real job. And schedule a time and date for new member orientation. That's really critical. And I will also add one thing to this, because I've had this happen to me. I joined a board, a national board, when I was with the YMCA, and I went to the board, and nobody I wasn't introduced. I was introduced, but I was never told who anybody else was. There was no time for me to meet people whatsoever. I walked into a board meeting, which actually was a very contentious board meeting, and it was my very first board meeting, and I knew nobody sitting around me. I'd had no opportunity to engage with anybody whatsoever. I felt like I'm not sure I want to be here. So one of the things that I really do suggest that boards do is to have a period of time when you can socialize with your new member. You can do it before the board meeting or after the board meeting, but do it so that new board member is made to feel part of the family and not just like left sitting there and nobody's spoken to them. I mean, that's a really important part of it because as Ashley said, one of the reasons why people do want to join boards is because they want to meet people and they want to socialize and enlarge their own sphere of influence by meeting all of these new people. So give them that opportunity. Make sure that you have a time for them to be able to meet and greet.
That's great. You just made me think of something.
Oh, good.
Well, you know, when you're doing the application and you're courting this board member, have all the names of all the other board members, their backgrounds, who they are, but also I like Ginger's idea, maybe beforehand, have a little social, but also name tags are so important, or name cards. So when you go in, you've seen who these people are on paper, but then you can put a name with a face. And so they're having name tags on when you have a little, even if it's just a 15-minute gathering beforehand of some food, you know, so they can be introduced and you can meet other people and you know who they are.
That's it for me. That's excellent, Ashley.
Well, thank you, everybody. Now I know we're early, but I think questions are so important. So Carrie's going to come on and read the questions. I don't know how Carrie and Ginger are going to do this.
I'm going to have to hand it over to her. But right before I do that, I also want to say that Ashley and I would like it if you could email us and give us some suggestions of what you would like to have in our webinars. Thank you all. I'm turning it over to Carrie now.
And I'll try to answer the questions.
You can do it, Ashley.
Due to technical reason. Hang in there, guys. We're going to answer your questions. She's just going to bring Carrie on.
Okay. Hi, everyone. This is Carrie. So let me go ahead and pull up the questions here. All right. The first question. As we are a genealogical organization, before someone can join us, they have to prove their papers. So you do not look for a philanthropist. When they do join, then you look for a prospective board member. We only have a few board jobs that ask for money, like Museum Properties Chair and Selgrave Manor Rep, Gunston Hall Regent, and Lady of Dumbarton House. Usually we look for someone qualified to do the job and will do it well. It's not really a question, but more of a comment, if you want to expand on that, Ashley.
Well, I hear what you're saying, but to me, because I am a dame, even as a member and not necessarily a board member, but just being a member of the organization, I feel my obligation is not only to give, but to volunteer like I'm doing today. Because I believe in the cause, and so I think it's an obligation, and I'm going to use the word obligation, that every single member, all 15,000 members, should be giving, should be volunteering, and understand why they're in that organization, and understand to be able to educate other people on what the good that the Dames does.
Yeah.
Okay. There's another question. Someone would like to see the application document. Is that something that we can make available?
You know what? I don't have one. I have one for my board. I think you have to customize it. I can send, some bullets of what should be on there and also what's in your notes. We have outlined it. But I think you have to customize it to fit your organization's needs, and I bet Dumbarton probably already has something similar but they can always be customized.
And Ginger, she's over my shoulder and saw the question, and she said that we can send Dumbarton houses as an example.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. That's what I was hoping she'd say.
And then I think there's just one last question, and it's one I can answer. It's, will the slides be available for download? Yes, they will be. They'll be on the Development Committee webpage on the member side of nscda.org. We'll try to do it this afternoon, but if not, it will be early next week.
And please, if you have any questions, reach out to Ginger. She would love to hear from you, and she'd be happy to help you in any way.
Great. That's all the questions we have. So unless anyone wants to quick type one up, Ashley, I think we're good to close it up.
Okay. Well, thank you, everybody, and have a wonderful weekend.
Everyone is commenting, thank you, and it was a great webinar, so I want to pass the accolades on. All right.
Okay. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.